Welcome back to the Padilla Family Homestead. Today we are talking about a subject that I have actually been talking about a lot off camera, and I thought because it's come up so many times off camera recently that this would be a great on camera discussion. And it is how to start buying in bulk, how I started buying in bulk, how to make that work in a budget, some kind of tips and tricks. As we are coming up to fall, well, we're in fall, as we're coming up to Christmas and all the holidays, and we have all the baking going on and the family gatherings and the special meals, and a lot of this stuff can start costing more and more, especially if you are not getting it ahead of time. And I think there's a lot of uneasiness and concern in some areas about what may happen November, December, January, so forth. And I think it's important to not live in fear. Now, I've shared this before because we did not always buy in bulk. We did not always stock a pantry. We started actually randomly in 2019, and I did not do it well. I talked about this in a very old video on why we buy bulk. So we did not do it well, or I guess we did it, but we didn't do it healthy, and we didn't know what we were doing. And so I bought a bunch of stuff with great intentions, but good intentions are just that. They're good intentions. Without follow through, it's wasted money. And so because we did it poorly and then we did it better, I have some kind of tips and things to talk about. So we started in 2019, and then in 2020, the pandemic hit, and we obviously had some grocery situations. In 2020, my daughter was really sick from about January through most of the year. It was most of the year. I think by September, October, she was doing a little bit better. And then December of 2020, my husband got hurt at work, and it took about 2.5 months for workers' comp to kick in to get any type of paycheck. And at the time, I wasn't working. So there were a lot of stressors that happened in 2020, and I am just so thankful that I started in 2019. And I get a lot of comments, and I'm going to talk about this right off the bat. I've shared before, our channel is intentionally living. I've shared before, I am a Christian, and I don't have a problem with prepping. I have a lot of people go, well, don't you trust God? Isn't he going to provide? Well, sometimes throughout the Bible, God talks about storing up for 7 years, for 7 years of a famine. There's lots of different things where he talks about preparing as well. So yes, you are supposed to trust. Yes, you are not supposed to live in fear. But yes, there is a time to be prepared. Now, preparedness, I don't think is hoarding. It is being prepared. I think any pantry should be a working pantry, that you're going through the things and replacing it, and you know how to use them. And so I think those are the biggest things to have: skills, food that you like, so that way you are thriving, not just surviving, and I don't know, the ability to cook them all. That's the skills, right? And the supplies that you need. So that's why, like in January, in February of 2021, we survived off of our pantry a lot. We survived off of me being able to make homemade bread and so a lot of the stuff that I had stocked up. And I realized at that moment, it's not about a pandemic. It's not about any political thing. it is about a safety and a security, knowing that if something outside of your control were to happen, that you can still feed your family. And that was key. I was living in an apartment in Northern California at the time, and so we created we made a closet into a pantry. It was one of those Harry Potter style closets, and I had bookshelves in it and 5-gallon buckets, and we did our thing there, and it really, really worked. So let's just get into it. Let's not talk about all the whys now. Let's talk about how to get started. So the first thing I would do is take inventory of what you eat. What is it that your family likes to eat? The other thing I would look at is, what do you know how to cook? Those are big, big things. The other thing is, what type of storage do you have? And so if you have freezer space, stocking up on some extra freezers, but in case of an emergency or a storm, a tornado, hurricane, fires, whatever, power goes out, do you have a generator to power it so you don't lose all that stuff? Those are things to look at when you are looking into bulk buying, is how are you going to keep this and use this during a time of need. And so a lot of times, like that, I have needed my stuff. I haven't needed water per se because I had water. There are other times where our water was out. So I think I had one time where we weren't able to use our water because it was like a few days of plumbing issues. And so, that you want to make sure you have water on hand, period. If you're worried about a storm, or if you're worried about a situation where there can be contaminants that way, you obviously want to have water on hand. But otherwise, really look at what you're eating and what your skills are, what you know how to cook. And if you don't know how to cook a lot, start cooking. Have paper recipes. Start a recipe book that you have. I really like the binder where you can put print recipes and put them in there. And then you could just pull out the plastic sleeve with the recipe in it, and it's great. And so once you know what you eat and what you know how to cook, then you would look at, okay, so what out of that can I make at home? What out of that is something that is good to have? What does my family really enjoy, right? So I hear people talking about, when buying in bulk, rice and beans all the time. If you don't eat rice and you don't eat beans, then there's no point in stocking rice and beans if your family's not going to eat them. We used to stock rice, but we don't anymore because rice really spikes my husband's blood sugar. And so for us, that's a really bad thing to have, that situation if we were in an emergency situation without finances, in a storm, whatever, right? So we're not going to stock that because that's not what our family needs at this point in time. But we love beans. And so beans are easy to soak, heat, and cook, and have it slow cooking, and then be able to eat those. And they add a lot of protein and they're filling. So we do have beans on hand because that's something that we really like, right? Knowing how to make bread. So if you know how to make bread, stocking what you are going to use. Whether it's yeast in the freezer, if you're going to use that, if you're doing sourdough, having that and your flours for that, and then I would have some water as well. That way you have something that is clean for feeding your sourdough because it's fermented. And if you're using Life Straw filtered water or something like that, I don't know the bacteria load, and so I don't know. I probably wouldn't do that in my sourdough, but that's because I'm super cautious. So those are things that you want to take into consideration. Now, once you're starting to break down, okay, I can make bread, so I need to have flour, salt, I need to have probably possibly some honey, I need to have a way to cook it. Let's say you do have a power outage. Well, you're probably not going to be making a ton of bread, like loaves of bread, because most people don't have ovens that are working unless you know how to cook over a fire. And you have a way to cook over fire. Um, but you could do some pan items like pita pockets or flatbreads or something along those lines. You could do something like that um, more easily, I think, over a fire. But those are things that you would want to take into consideration is what else are you going to have if you can't utilize an oven. Okay, so another big question I get asked, and we'll jump into some other things that I have on hand, but I want to talk about how to start because I feel like this is the scariest part. And if people are super budgeting, then it's hard to add anything else in. And so um you're the only one who's going to know your finances, and you're the only one who's going to know how you can kind of start, right? What you're comfortable shifting around, and it may not be a 25-pound bag of flour, but it may be 10 pounds or 15 pounds, and then slowly working into other things. So for me, if I have the grocery budget, okay, and so I'm going to tell you what I did bad, and then I'm going to tell you what I did good. I went and bought a bunch of 5-gallon buckets, and I bought big thing of rice. I bought a huge thing of cheap flour from Costco. At the time, it was only like $7 for a 25-pound bag of flour. It was bleached. I had a bunch of yeast, which that was a good one, and I bought a bunch of all this extra stuff because I was like, oh, I'm going to cook all these things. I never cooked it. It ended up going bad. My flour, I didn't eat enough of the bread, so I wasn't doing sourdough at the time. And then I learned that bleached flour you can't even use for sourdough. And I ended up with like 20 pounds of flour ended up going in the trash because it had gone rancid. I bought things that I didn't know how to utilize. We didn't eat that much rice. I didn't take into consideration how much what my family wanted to eat. So the rice sat there, and I used it sometimes. Now, my family did like brown rice for a while. We did that more often until we learned about my husband's sugar. But there were things that I didn't realize. And so that's how I did it poorly. When I started doing it well, I would take sections of my grocery budget. So let's say the first thing probably was stopping buying coffee out. Every once in a while, I'll still do it now. But at the time, I was working outside the house and I was buying coffee a lot. And so I wanted to be able to buy coffee at home. Well, I like flavored coffee. I don't like cheaper Folgers. I don't like Folgers coffee. And I don't like a lot of the like breakfast blends or French roast. It's not something that's enjoyable to me. And so if I'm going to enjoy a cup of coffee, most of the coffees were more expensive. And so I ended up finding a place called Angelino's, and I buy their coffee pods. I buy it 12 boxes of 24 pods and at once. And that's getting me the cheapest price. It's 39 cents a pod. And I can choose my flavors that I want. I get stuff for my husband. When my daughter was living with us, I'd get flavors that she liked. And then I get my decaf, and we're happy. And we have coffee for months. Well, what that means is I don't have a coffee budget all these other months now because I spent it all, let's say, in January. So if I spend my coffee budget for 6 months in January, then I'm not buying it again till June. So each month, that part of the budget, so February, let's say I'm buying bulk in peanut butter. And then now I don't have to buy coffee and I don't have to buy peanut butter. Then in March, I'm buying or canning a bunch of jelly, right? Well, now I have peanut butter, jelly. Now, like what that's how you start. You pick one item if that's all you can do. And you're going to pick the item that you can save the most money on buying bulk and that you already have the storage for, that you can easily put into storage. So those are some of the easy things to immediately start seeing a cost savings, right? Then as you get going with it, it's easier to jump in. Okay, so it's time to buy basil. I can go spend, I can go spend a couple of dollars, whatever, getting a little organic, I think it was about $4 last time I looked. I haven't bought it in a while. So I can spend $4 on an organic little half-ounce thing of basil from Walmart or wherever, right? And it's this little seasoning jar. And if you're cooking from home, you will be surprised at how fast you go through that. Because anything home cooked, you are using way more flavoring than you are aware. Because there's so many layers of flavor in all the things you buy store-bought that makes it taste good. And so you need a lot of the flavoring at home. So I can either spend $4 and get organic basil in a little half-ounce jar and have it fit cutely in this little spice rack or whatever, right? Or I can spend $7 or $8, buy 1 pound of basil, which is about a gallon of basil almost, and have basil for the year. Well, when I look at it like that, look at that savings, because if I'm cooking at home a lot, I'm going to need a lot of that basil, right? And so if I could have my basil on hand, and I'm using it out of, I put them in, because I use them so much, I put them in a quart-sized jar for what I'm working out of, and then half-gallon or quart-sized jars for storage in the pantry. And so that saves so much money right there. Okay, so if that's basil, what if I could do that for the year for basil, rosemary, thyme, parsley, pepper, let's say you do use turmeric and things, all your basic onion powder, garlic powder. There's so many amazing things that you can get in bulk. Now, I'm quoting bulk prices for Azure Standard when I'm saying the spices, because that's where I get them from. It's the most convenient for me. And it still beats it buying those things there than buying them elsewhere. Now, paying the shipping fee now, I'm watching what I can get locally for a certain price and what I can get through Azure, right? What is still worth the price? Flours, whole grains, herbs, all of those things 1,000 times over Azure Standard. There's just no competition. So, spices, that's a great way to save money, and you don't even realize how much you are saving when you are doing that. And it is crazy. And then having salt, like you're going to need salt if you're cooking from scratch, if making your own bread, you need that in like all kinds of things. So having salt on hand, let's see, what are some other things that you could have on hand? If you can get into the habit of making things from scratch and creating a pattern of making things from scratch, having flour and eggs, that's going to give you pasta. Super easy. It's actually super easy to make pasta. You can hand roll it out on your counter and slice it with a pastry cutter or a knife and have homemade pasta. You don't need a pasta machine. If you don't want one or can't afford it right off the bat, you can make delicious pasta with just flour and eggs. Um, so that's how I kind of started. Is I'm looking at what we eat, right? And then I'm going, well, how can I get this? And how can I get this for a price that I can afford that's going to fit into my budget for that month? And what can I cut maybe one month to make it happen? Okay, so if I cut and I don't drink coffees out for this amount of time, then I can buy all my coffee that I need for the next 6 months. Great. That just saved me money. I'm willing to go without to get what I need, right? Or I'm going to say, do you know what our big snack is going to be? Popcorn. Having bulk popcorn that you pop in an air popper is so much more affordable than those microwave packages of popcorn. It is so much more affordable, and it's more fun, and kids love to watch the popcorn maker go. So that's another easy way to save a snack, right? And to make snacks and to save money. And so if you could save it, let's say you have popcorn, 25 pounds of popcorn, I want to say was like upper 20s. I want to say it was like $28 or something. I might be wrong. Don't quote me on that price. But 25 pounds of popcorn. You need like a third of a cup for a bag's worth of popcorn. Like, it's crazy how far that can go. And so then you can get your seasonings or whatever that you want to put on it. Have your butter. I think canned meat, having that on hand is great. In case of an emergency, if you eat it. If you don't eat tuna, don't buy tuna. If you don't eat tuna without mayonnaise and you don't have a way to keep mayonnaise cold in an emergency, don't buy tuna. Canned chicken can be great. There's only so many ways that I like canned chicken though. So for me, we have a freezer. We like red meat. But we also really like beans will help satisfy on a level that I can't explain. The other thing is broth, having broth on hand. Bone broth is amazing and super healthy. And if you can stock up on that, that is great to have on hand. And I mean, you can buy it or you can make it very easily. By buying a whole chicken, you're eating the chicken, cooking down the bones, making a broth, and you're getting way more bang for your buck with a whole chicken than you can buying breasts, legs, and broth. You know, like, what you can get for your dollar value is a big, big difference. So those are things that I really would consider taking into account. So I'm not going to go into a bunch more right now because I don't want to overwhelm with all the possibilities and all the things. I'm going to say sit down, write down what does your family eat. If you have no clue what your family eats, keep a food diary for everybody. What are they eating at school? What are you cooking them at home? What are you eating while you're at work? What are the things that are feasible? What do you have access to? And what are the things that you enjoy? Because you don't want to forget things that you enjoy. I have a ton of chocolate chips saved because do you know what I really like? If I need like a craving of something, I'll take those chocolate chips and some cans of some sweetened condensed coconut milk and melt those together, refrigerate them, and I have fudge. And it's delicious. A little tiny bit satisfies a chocolate craving, and I'm a happy camper. And it's not chocked full of a bunch of cruddy stuff. I mean, it's still not great for you. But in a case of something were to be going on, and I still had, my husband was sick or got injured or I had something going on and we had a lack of income, then guess what? We still get a guilty pleasure, and we're not like just surviving. If you eat the same thing over and over again every single day, you are going to get to a point where you would rather not eat and people starve to death. That is a very serious problem. So, finding things that you actually like and having variety saved is important. And so, sit down, figure out what it is that you like. What are those things that you love? What are those things that you eat on a daily basis? What are your holiday things that you love? And then sit down and go, what do I know how to make? Okay. If you don't know how to make stuff, start learning. Cooking from scratch is going to save you a ton of money. And if you could just cook a few basic things from scratch and save money that way, all the money you would have been spending on fast food, you're using a portion of that towards your home cooking and then use that towards buying your bulk food. It really, really makes a difference. And so I would really look at all the dollar amounts, figure that out, and then go, okay, what do I have space for? How can I do these things? What type of situation are you prepping for? Because I think it's important that you have an understanding. Like I said, are you going to have power? Are you going to have water? Are you going to have a way to cook, an oven? All of those things take into effect what you are storing. And so I think having a variety of things for a variety of different situations is really, really important. Being able to survive like we did for 2.5 months without a paycheck, or being able to survive if you have no power for 5 days, being able to survive in a situation where it's, I don't know, there's all kinds of situations that can happen. So those are things that you want to look at, all those different little nuances and those different possibilities and go, okay, so what am I going to do? What if? What if this? And it's not because you're living in fear that you think those things are going to happen. Because guess what? If you're cooking normally and if you're making your bread at home and you are cooking from scratch and something were to happen and you have to utilize that, it's not going to be a stress. It's going to be a comfort that you have them. And so if you're already implementing it now, then that is going to make that emergency situation or that hiccup in the road that much more easier to handle and to overcome, because this isn't going to be like, oh my gosh, I had to figure out how I'm going to do this. I don't remember how to cook this way. I don't remember blah, 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 blah. And so by having the practice, you're getting it. And then when it comes time to refill your flour, that's what you're going to order that month. And then another month is going to be sugar is another one I have on in bulk because I don't buy brown sugar anymore. So you buy sugar in bulk, and then I make my vanilla sugar and I make my brown sugar out of that. And then, so maybe it's going to be sugar. Maybe it's going to be the flour. Maybe if you don't have chickens, you need to get a big thing of eggs to last a couple of months, whatever. Whatever it is that you've got going on. Maybe it's going to be meat 1 month or for a couple months, depending on how much you're buying and the cost of how it all goes. And so, but if your family doesn't eat a lot of one of these things, then skip it off. There's not really a right way and a wrong way. There is a good, better, best way, or a not so good, better, and best way to do it, because you just need, every family is different, and so you need to assess what your family needs, what they eat, and then go from there. And so that is my suggestion. That's my video. I will end up going in depth at another time on buying bulk again and some more cost savings things. I'm really considering, I've just got to get myself back to a Costco we live a couple hours away from a Costco, but I'm highly considering doing a what we are willing to buy at Sam's Club, what we buy at Costco, because we love Costco. We have a Sam's Club, but that's because that's what's close by, but it's not anything like Costco. So, we love Costco. We buy from Azure Standard. We have some local grocery stores that we use here as well for certain items. And then we need to get connected with farmers out here. But I will go into depth more on kind of what we do. Right now, with us being in transition, it's kind of a weird what we do. I don't know. It's not like a normal, I'm like halfway doing some of the stuff. I'm still buying in bulk. I have a bunch of fruit in the freezer that I've got to work through. I got it right before I got my job, and I haven't finished canning it. So I need to get through that, but we're still buying the popcorn. We're still buying flowers. We're still buying, we go to Costco and we stocked up on jerkies and snacks and those kind of things. We do fruit. I try to do meat where I can. And then herbs, teas, coffee. We're still doing all that. So we just don't have the space for the large pantry until we end up in our own place. So it's harder for me to go that route and show you all the things I'm buying, but I do want to do a what we like to buy at each place video, because I think that may or may not be helpful. Let me know if that's something that you're interested in, because I find that sometimes people just don't know where to start or how to put the pieces together. Yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking about it. I'm trying to figure out what to do. But I'll have some other videos coming up about purchasing in bulk and how to cook from bulk what you have. And then go from there. We're also going to have our Tea Time with Jen video starting up pretty soon. It's going to be the raw and unfiltered. A little scary. I like to edit cut things out, but we're not going to do that this time. So we'll have those coming up where we'll deep dive into some of the things, some other big reasons why we purchase, is some of the locations we purchase at, why certain things are important to us, and probably a little bit more into buying in bulk at some point in that. And then when we do end up moving again to hopefully our, I almost said final resting place. That's not it though. Once we move into our place, wherever that is, and I'm building the pantry there, I have some stuff with me, and I'm going to have some stuff from here, but there's a lot of things that I'm going to be starting over, because as I'm using things up, I'm trying to keep in mind where we are right now, and then let things kind of go down just a tiny bit to where I'm good. It's easier to move it again. So those are things we'll be sharing, that process. Anyway, if you like this kind of content, or if you have more questions about purchasing in bulk or so forth, just let me know. I love to figure out what type of topics you guys have questions on, where I can help and fill in things, because I want to be a support. I really believe that good food is important, and I believe that what we fuel our bodies with is really important. I don't know another way to phrase this right this second. So I think that if we can get to a point that homemade is going to be best because it has less preservatives, and then homegrown is even better because it's even less. You know exactly what was put into all the things. But overall, you just need to do the best you can where you are. And again, that's going to look different for absolutely everybody. But the more prepared you are in seasons where you're doing okay or good, then you will be that much more prepared and set up and less stressed during seasons that are complicated and stormy. So, anyway, I hope this helps in some way. I hope I didn't ramble too much. But thank you for watching. Drop your comments, suggestions about buying in bulk, starting buying in bulk, how you guys started that. That's fine. If you guys are already doing it, then I'd love your advice on that in the comments for other people who may be watching who are just starting out. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.